All right. So as you can see, we have our four speakers already lined up there. And since I already introduced Natalie, Yama, and Fahad, so Yan, I will leave that to you. So can you do a quick self-introduction? We know you're from Royal Bank of Canada. I know you are the brain behind all those digital transformation and the public cloud adoption. But can you elaborate a little bit more there?
Certainly, sure. Thanks, Bryan. My name is Kossals. I'm with Royal Bank of Canada. I'm a director of cloud security architecture at Royal Bank of Canada. I'm part of the extended cloud program team, right? So within the cloud program, we have multiple representatives, different teams. I think of over 11 different teams across the organization, across the bank. I'm from the GCS organization, Global Cybersecurity, and what we are bringing to the cloud program is we are kind of like an oversight from compliance perspective, from security perspective of the whole program, making sure that the program is delivered safe and sound, and you know we got security eyes on everything that the program is doing.
So since Yan already introduced his job there, most of the company right now are considering the like a cloud adoption, public cloud or private cloud, and also COVID-19 really accelerate the digital transformation. So a lot of companies are considering that. So Yan, my question for you is, why we are doing those public cloud adoption, doesn't matter it's Azure or AWS or Google Cloud, or digital transformation, how security and compliance can really support this one? We already heard some insights from Natalie, Yam, and Fahad, but from user side, what do you think about this?
Right. I think security and compliance is really, really important. It's paramount, you know, to public cloud adoption. You know, as companies, they go through the digital transformation. They have developers who are just, you know, excited and eager to use all the fancy bells and whistles of the public cloud program, and let's say data analytics teams or data scientists, they're just, you know, biting their nails off. They want to utilize and leverage the power of compute that public cloud brings, and the executives, right? They're all sold on the cost savings initiatives, right? So at this point, the organization, they're just traveling at like 100 miles an hour, right? Like, you know, on Autobahn. They want to get there super fast, and they want to get there, you know, like next day, tomorrow, yesterday. And the next thing you know, within the organization, there's all of a sudden a rogue cloud program just you know, evolved. There will be no security oversight. There's no governance, no visibility into what they're doing. And then expectedly or maybe unexpectedly for the organization, you end up on the front page, let's say, of a blog or a newspaper, New York Post or any other newspaper, right? Or you get a ransom notice that says, hey, you know, transfer 10 Bitcoins if you want to protect your client's PI data. And all of this was just because developers, they were super eager to adopt public cloud, and they left some data stores, let's say databases, public, right? Or they attached a misconfigured identity to one of the public resources. And of course, you'll get discovered, right? There's threat actors and bounty hunters. They all, you know, they all like that stuff. They want to get famous or make some money. So to reduce all this risk, right? Companies, organizations, individuals, smaller companies, they should slow down, and they should spend some time to develop or adopt or enhance their frameworks, right? And processes to help them in this journey. You know, and while these frameworks might delay their cloud adoption, they will definitely safeguard the infrastructure from being that negative center of attention. So
excellent. So that's good to hear from the people really doing these things, right? So a lot of times when you just talk, it's easier, but when you really implement that to put the rubber on the road, that's most important. And I like what you said. Security is a major pillar for the cloud adoption, so that's really important. So speaking of that, related to cloud controls compliance, I know Natalie talk about information governance. Yama talk about posture management. Fahad talk about IAM. So what are some key concepts, overall speaking, what are some key concepts or frameworks related to cloud controls and compliance? Yan, from your experience, what's your view on that?
I would say, as Yama mentioned, on AWS, for example, there are over 100 different services, right? Same thing on Azure, right? There's over 100 different services that the public cloud offer, right? So something in regards to the concept, something that we have done internally a few years ago, we kind of developed this process to ensure the security and compliance kind of goes along the way of application or infrastructure development lifecycle. And we basically start with reviewing and pretty much tearing apart the cloud provider services, right, that are selected for that consumption. Our objective is really to demonstrate and provide feedback to developers that what is the best way and secure way, non-default way to utilize those services, right? And as part of this process, we define a set of detective and preventative controls, which then get built into the cloud platform natively, or using things like, let's say, AWS config or Azure policy, right? Those are very powerful native capabilities, or by utilizing the third-party CSPM tools, right? The cloud service posture management tools. And to ensure, our recommendation kind of met not only on the first day, right? Not from that initial kind of review, but goes along throughout the whole life cycle of the product. Those preventive and detective controls native for third party really help. And as for the frameworks, we started with CSA, Cloud Control Matrix, and the MITRE Cloud Matrix frameworks. We basically adopted those frameworks. We coupled them with the vendor best practices, some of our internal standards, and upon them, we developed our own set of standards, right? Our own set of objectives. We have over 100 objectives spanning across 10 different domains. We look at things like authentication, authorization, data security, and basically we use these objectives to govern and audit pretty much each public cloud release. So that would be
all right. Okay, excellent. So basically adopt some industry framework then tailored, of course, for the organization needs. Yes. So speaking of those controls, one of the things, as Fahad also mentioned, is on the IAM side. So Fahad talk quite a lot of on what's the right thing you need to do, the life cycle, all those things. But what are some common steps organization often make mistakes? So often overlook. So those are the things we not only learn from successful stories, but also learn from the lessons, right? So maybe this is a question I will ask Fahad. So what kind of lessons you can share?
Sure, and my messaging will be very in line with what Natalie, or the common theme Natalie, Yan, and Yama was sharing, right? So that as organizations get more and more complex and get very excited with the digital transformation, the opportunities that comes with digital transformation, there will be different business units or different parts of the business. They might sign up with various cloud services or different cloud offerings, and they might get blindsided, and often get blindsided actually, about that holistic picture, right? So that the governance aspect of it. So just how all the other panelists were mentioning about the governance being a key component of it, for cloud security governance, the very same thing applies for IAM, right? So having a big focus in the governance and looking at, start with some sort of, I would say, assessment to see that where you are, where do you want to go, what initiatives are going on. Is the initiatives that are going on, are they actually following your, are they aligned with your business objectives, right? And are they in the crossroads of like violating any requirements you have, like regulatory or security controls? And so finding that gaps early on and building a plan before implementing something for IAM would be my suggestion.
All right. So back to the basics. And while we tend to love the technology things, right? So when we work on all those vendor tools, the things configuration, but there's overall governance, the business drivers behind. So that's really important. You also need to pay attention to this big picture, if you put it that way. All right. And so as we all know, cloud is, although it's fancy, faster, reliable. If you implement it correctly, it should be more secure, or all those agile, all those DevOps things, the fancy things, right? So, but there are certain challenges on the cloud, especially related to, I guess, the compliance work, because if it's too easy, people tend to do all kind of things, right? So what kind of some common challenges while doing those compliance work on the cloud? Maybe, I don't know, Yan, you want to say something about this, about the compliance side?
I'll give an answer from resource compliance, right? From the public cloud resource compliance. There are many kind of ways or angles to tackle, I guess, this question. But from the resource compliance, some of the challenges is that when let's say you have those native controls, right, and you build those native processes and ways to detect the, let's say, config drift, right, or resource uncompliance, right, to your initial baseline of security controls, or if you have the CSPM tool, right, but which is reporting something that it's seeing, but maybe it applies to, let's say, 90% of your environment, but except this 10% of your environment. So what do you do, right? So I would say the tuning aspect of resource compliance, to ensure that the resources are compliant, the tuning aspect is very important, right? There's some easy kind of knockoffs you can do, right? There's some easy ways to tune off those alerts and the events. But some of them, let's say if they're managed resources, right? Let's say if it's a managed Kubernetes cluster or some kind of a data analytics platform tool, and those managed resources, they're kind of halfway managed, right? So they are managed by the provider, but they have a component that is deployed in your environment, and you can see that those components, you can sometimes even log into those components, but you can't do anything about them, right? But you have to really kind of think from the perspective of, well, what if something happens to those components, right? What if those components get compromised? How do you ensure compliance of them, right? So I guess some of the options is just trust the vendor that those components are secured, or ask for evidence, right? Sometimes it can be successful, sometimes not so much. But if you want to dig deeper, then what can you do, right? How do you tune out those alerts in regards to those managed resources, right? So some of those challenges that we have faced before, right, with the resource compliance.
Excellent. So the compliance is a little bit different, but actually that's related to a lot of parts. And so there are some I hate to call it a best practice, but it's also the people try those, found that it's useful. So what kind of when you design and implement those cloud controls, although there's so many cloud controls, so from your perspective, what would be considering some a best practice to do it, right? So in the general way, I know Yama, you did a lot of implementations. You are the champion also on the controls, like monitoring and like a cloud posture management. So what do you think are some like a best practice to do that?
So there's a lot that can be done, but I'll basically break it down to probably 5 of the most important ones in my experience as well as my opinion here. Number one being, and this is what Yen mentioned earlier, was following some sort of framework. These frameworks are created to help you with controls and governance. So you should always be working towards something and following some sort of framework. Some you can't always follow 100%, but you need to be following something and following that type of practice. The second one, and this sounds very obvious, but you really need to understand your infrastructure and your environment. And it sounds simple, but with so much going on in the cloud, you really need to understand what services you're using, why you're using them, and learn how to use them properly. Third, know what you're responsible for. So what Natalie mentioned, right? The shared responsibility model. It's extremely important, but once again, with so much going on in the cloud and so much change happening, it's one of those things that a lot of organizations forget to take a look at, or they definitely overlook it. 4, going more into kind of that Fahad's area, securing your credentials. This includes access to the cloud, but the main one of the things that a lot of organizations forget is it's not just for the access to the cloud, it's also to the services and what they can do with the services. So the one thing I'll leave you with in that area is you should always, and I'll say always again because it's extremely important, to follow the principle of least privileges. And lastly, improve your visibility. You can only know what you're controlling when you have visibility in it. And that's where you can come into something like a CSPM tool.
Excellent. So if I can summarize, basically you need to know the industry standard. That's a baseline to start. And also you need to know yourself, right? So you need to know what do you have, right? So if you don't know what do you have, other people, it's really hard. Although we can have some automated tool to do that, but it's better for you to understand what do you have. But of course, while we're doing that, you also need to bring the visibility to that part. Okay, that's great. So cloud is changing so fast, right? So I think Yama, when you in your presentation you mentioned from within 5 years, from like a several control or the service, all of a sudden become almost like a 200 service. Same as a Microsoft. I keep receiving the update from Microsoft. Today, after this added another one. Sometimes even I ask Microsoft people, they say, "Oh, we also need to learn. There's so many new things, if not in my territory, right?" So based on the current change, or the industry trends, what do you see the industry is going regarding the cloud controls and the compliance? And maybe I can start with Natalie.
Yeah, sure. I was actually talking with a chief compliance officer at a financial services company, and he shared a good example. He just commented first that he's noticed real increasing complexity in the regulatory landscape, but just in everything that they do. And so his example started with that. They used to monitor in more of one-dimensional ways, and now, especially if you think about things like trying to monitor for insider trading, for example, that old way of maybe reading a report and trying to look for anomalies by, a few analysts or managers, that I don't know how they ever found risks in those old methods. But he mentioned, we need to integrate and understand what's happening across these different data sources. In his example, he's like, I have, a potential insider trading event. It may have come to me through a market surveillance tool or through email monitoring communication, something like that. But then you also have to look at their emails and communications and understand what's happening on different chat-based platforms, with Teams or Bloomberg Messenger or recorded lines. You might have to grab their physical badge swipes. You might have to look at their Amex charges. You might have to look at their HR data to put things in context. And then what's happening with all of the documentation that they might be saving or sending to different locations. So it's much, much more complex. That's just one scenario of all of the things that he's going to, has to oversee. But the regulators expect it too. I mean, that you need to find these ways, first that you're integrating that data so that you can get these insights and correlate that information. It has to be governed. The information you receive needs to be in context so you can find those risks. So it's that need to, the complexity, therefore the need for integration, therefore the need to really leverage intelligence and automation, because how else can we do this and how could we possibly scale without making those changes? And I think the final thing might be, what type of insight does that give us into the type of talent pool that we need to help manage this very complex environment? Great comment. Because quite many times when we talk about security, we talk about the external threat, right? So, but what Natalie, you mentioned is the major part also is insider threat. So insider prevention, like threat prevention. And especially in current situation, everybody like work from home, like a distributed workforce, dynamic workforce. How do you ensure the security, confidentiality, all those things? So that's actually also added a compliance challenge to the real world. And so speaking of the industry trend, I don't know, Yan or Yama or Fahad, what do you see from your practice or from your perspective? Maybe Fahad, you can start.
So industry trend, can you guys hear me? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, the industry trend perspective, for one of the key trend across, like it's very common across all industries, I would say, is any technologies or products that are out in the market. We're seeing organizations are expecting everyone to be cloud ready, right? So that's a common theme. It's any product vendors that, and it's seeing in the IAM, not only in IAM but in other areas too. It's not okay to just be only on-prem compliant, right? So that's a common theme we see. So and pretty much everyone, all the and vendors are paying attention to it as well, and they are investing heavily. It's so that's what I would say from my like one of the key observations from my point of view. I'll welcome other thoughts from Yan, Natalie, or Yama.
Excellent. Everything needed cloud. Yeah. I worked on in the document management, some like development before. So usually it's on-premise, but then all of a sudden we need to be cloud ready. But although that's several years back, so yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter which domain, you probably need to add the cloud component. What do you want to add to that?
No, I would add to that to what Fahad mentioned. So the companies they all of the companies, organizations, they want to be in the cloud, right? Or they are in the cloud at somewhat. But all the security vendors, right? Security products, they also have some kind of a cloud capability, right? So now every vendor, they offer something to do with, security in the cloud. Not sure if it works. Maybe it works, maybe it's not, but they offer it, right? And they all try to sell it to you, right? So let's say, I don't know, someone that's traditionally been doing only firewalls, all of a sudden now they're doing something cloud related, cloud security related, right? So the trend I see is that everyone is in the cloud. Cloud is the future, right? Security of the cloud is something, that everyone is trying to achieve. So yeah, that was another trend I'm seeing.
Okay, wonderful. And Yama, what's your view?
To actually echo what Yan was just saying right now, and being actually one of the only vendors here on the panel, we're seeing the exact same trend. We're seeing everybody it's becoming that the market is becoming very saturated with very niche players trying to come in, or you have, just like Yan mentioned, you have people that are, predominantly network security now trying to become data center security and giving you services for application security. But the one thing I have seen from a lot of the different organizations we have talked to is they're all looking for a single pane of glass. They believe in the layered approach, but they need something that they don't have 10 different eyes needing to look at 5 different consoles to try to figure out what's going on. So we're actually seeing the utilization of stuff like SIM tools are being used a lot more now in the industry than previously, as well as now we're seeing a big shift for both on-premise and in the cloud for something like detection response, so cross-platform detection response, making sure that you can correlate across your different environments. So whether it's your email, your anything you might still have on-premise or in the cloud.
Excellent. Yeah, so cloud actually added some like a complexity. So you have a on-premise cloud hybrid, and if you have so many services like Yama you mentioned, so it's really hard. You kind of using like more than 10, 20, like 30 different tools to monitor. You have to tell the single version of truth, right? So what about those conflict to each other, the story to tell? Okay, good. My last question for the panel or the fireside chat really is, we always leave that to the last question, is talent development. Because security really is about process, people, technology. So talent actually counts the major part of the people side. So from your point of view, so since cloud is hot, security is hot, cloud security definitely is very, very hot. So what's your recommendation for people like want to do put their career or career path in the cloud and the cloud security side? So what's your insight on that? What kind of things you can recommend to them?
I can take a shot at this. I would say, I guess it depends, right? So I would say there are two kind of categories of this, right? So there's some new grads who are trying to get a foot in the door, who are trying to, they're exploring where to enter. 10 years ago it was network security, for example, right, or application security. Now things are going towards the cloud security, right? So what are the way I see it, the best way to kind of get your foot into that door, in the cloud security door, is start with self-learning, right? There are so many, we're very lucky these days that there's so many resources that out there, Cloud Guru, and they acquired Linux Academy, and there's Udemy and a bunch of others that offer various courses to learn cloud security, right? To get certified in different platforms, to get certified in something general as, let's say, CCSP, right? And so I would say start with that. Try to familiar yourself with all those certification programs, and actually as you prepare for those certification programs, that's the best way to learn, right? Like create your own environment. All the vendors, they offer trial credits, right? Temporary trial credits, so you can play with the environment, spin things up. Don't forget to spin things down. It can get expensive. So make sure to play with the resources, and be very eager to learn, right? I think that's very, very important. This industry evolves very, very fast. So one thing today is cloud security, tomorrow it could be back on prem, right? You never know, right? So
quantum computing.
Yeah. So that's one kind of bucket, right? And then the second bucket is those who are in the traditional security, right? So those who are already employed, but they currently in the, let's say, network security or operation security or application security, right? And they're already employed, so they want to get into cloud security. So what is the best way to get into it, right? Usually employers, they look with some kind of years of experience, right? Especially if you're already in the field. So I would say the best way is to really work with your immediate boss, with your leadership, to come up with programs to get to kind of adopt those skills, right? To maybe do some shadowing of the cloud security team, and really kind of, if you're interested and if you have the mindset of cloud security, right? Because in cloud in general, you really have to adapt quickly, and you have to be very kind of flexible and agile with the way cloud is, right? A lot of the on-prem processes and the way things are done on-prem with traditional security is not what should be done in the cloud security, right? Or in the cloud. So I would say, really work with your boss, with your executive team to come up with processes, platforms for that kind of shift into the cloud security space.
Excellent. Yeah. So the key concept or part is a takeaway is really start to learn immediately, because right now the resources are everywhere. And also to find opportunities close to your job right now. If you're already in the professional job, so you want to switch or like spin your career to another related to cloud, right? So find some internal opportunities, maybe you can from your other team or projects. Great. Natalie, so what's your view on that one, the talent development for cloud?
Yeah, so, I may have a little bit of a non-traditional background myself. So I started in music performance and English and was in software development. I moved into legal and compliance basically by trying to solve issues with, we were moving at the time from, moving from mainframe to distributed systems, and we had these challenges that no one really knew how to solve for, like how can we get rid of less data? How do we actually apply what that retention policy says so that we can only move what has value? And so I think it's that combination of what you're just speaking to, of like having that curiosity and a willingness to tackle some of these challenges and kind of showing up for those big business challenges. And I mean, that's really what lifted me from more of the software development, IT, program management side, and actually, soon started working in legal and compliance and into consulting and so on and so forth, and getting kind of a really rich set of experiences. So, I mean, I think there's just many different avenues and there's so many different skill sets that are applicable, where we may have a strength in one and just need to learn some others. So it's the openness, the curiosity, and that ability to come in and solve problems that you can really make your career go in the directions you're interested in by finding, what one thing hooks to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are multiple doors to enter to this field, right? So it may not be just a purely technology door, or you can have a legal, governance, risk, or operation, security as well, development. So there are multiple entry points to this cloud world. All right, so
Absolutely.
That's very good. Fahad, what's your view on that one?
Sure. I will actually, as I was structuring my thought process, it aligns with what Natalie or Yama was saying. So I'll summarize it in 3 key points. Like I said, I see like for getting into this new, like if you want to specialize on cloud, on cybersecurity, right? So the first thing is the learning opportunities, right? So now, like I said, same thing as Yama was saying, we're not in that age anymore where information is compartmentalized. You have information available for any area you want to specialize in. If you put your mind to it and you want to specialize on something, just invest a year or so, and you can become you can ramp up very quickly. The second one is pushing yourself, right? Like and that goes along with what Jan was saying, that pushing your boundaries of like what you're doing and try to keep up with the new technologies or trends that are out there and get engaged on the job or outside the job. And the last one I would say is networking with the use of LinkedIn and the network and opportunities like this. Just get connected with the folks who are specialized in it, and that can open up like mentorship. Like you'll be surprised like how open people are to help each other. Right? So those are the 3 areas I would say.
Excellent. Because I like especially the one you mentioned, the network, right? So you are not just learn by yourself. If you can find a good mentor or network with industry experts, that actually speed up your process. And who knows, some of them maybe the hiring manager or your next boss. I know many of you are in the hiring position also, right? So that's actually good. Yama, what's your view on that?
It's a little difficult going last with everyone kind of taking all the points that I had in my mindset. But just to kind of add to it, one thing I guess to this mentoring aspect or the networking aspect, just to give a real life example to everyone that's listening, we actually at Trend Micro we've hired straight from a networking perspective, our engineer, our most latest engineer, no security background, but comes from a DevOps background, was a part of a lot of these different types of events with us. And we actually brought him on. We can teach the security aspect, right? He was able to bring in something else to the table. And when it comes to kind of that learning aspect, Yen and Fahad both hit really good points that there's so much to learn about. But to what Yen was saying, get your hands dirty. Don't sit there and read a book. When you get into something like cybersecurity, you need to get your hands dirty. You need to launch those instances. You need to play with those services. In my opinion, that's the best way to truly learn. And as you do that and you utilize networks and certifications, you'll definitely have a successful future in the industry.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's not just about knowledge. It's also really about how do you apply that knowledge to get some like a practical experience, which, by the way, a little bit promotion, we did the cloud security experiential learning. We combine Microsoft technology. We're actually using the Trend Micro as a part of the module, the Cloud One module. So it's kind of like a seamless. So people really doing great during that sessions. All right. So speaking of time, right on time. Thank you very much for all the speakers here. So I also want to thank for people online. You spend 2 hours with us, and hopefully you get some value from today, something valuable. So I like to ask everybody, give a virtual applause to our great speakers. Thank you very much for your time and effort and sharing your knowledge. And also give yourself a big pat. And all right, so, okay, good.